imagine you are the school director of a 400-student K-8 school. Your students are 100% minority. They are 90% of them qualify for free and reduced lunch, and the overwhelming majority of them are 2 or more years behind. The achievement level at your school proficiency, that means the composite, it means your reading, math, and science scores, are at 43%. Added to that, your board has just dismissed the management company that's been running your school, and then they invite you to lunch. Not good. At that lunch, and this is a situation I found myself in 7 years ago. At that lunch, my board said to me, "We are challenging you to improve this school. 43% is what the state overall is doing with our population, but that's not good enough. And if that's the best we can do, then there's no point for us to exist. That's already being done. So we'll support you as much as we can, but the ball's in your court. Make it happen." At this point, what I want to share with you today is 3 principles that we came across as we were trying to make this transition. I consider them to be universal principles, so I want to dispel the elephant in the room. Yes, we're a charter school, but this is not about being a charter school. The principles I want to share can really be used by anyone. So that whole idea is they're a charter, they could do it, that goes away. The first principle is student-centered design. Now, that's not really novel. The idea is that every decision you make is based around the students that you have. Now, you would think in schools it's about the kids. But I'm talking about something a little more specific. I'm not talking about the student generic. I'm talking about the student specific. And this is what it looked like at Sugar Creek. At the time that this happened, we were in Title I school restructuring improvement. That's the worst level of school improvement you can get to. That's the level where they say, these are your options. You may fire everybody in your school and try again. You may totally nix your curriculum and try again. At any rate, whatever you do has to be transformative. In addition to that, the State Charter School Advisory Council had voted to close us. Some political things went on, we got 1 year. So we had 1 year to fix this problem. We started talking about who are we going to be, what are we going to be, what's our school going to be. We thought, well, we could be Afrocentric, we could be fine arts, we could be STEM. We thought of more stuff, believe me. If there's a kind of school out there, we went through that as an option. And what we kind of came up with was, we have to turn this around in 1 year. So this is probably not the time to redesign the world. What we need to do, we already have students. These are the ones who have to be successful. So what we need to do is design a school based around who's already here. We knew a lot about our kids. We had the data. We knew about them demographically. We knew about them educationally. We knew their strengths. We knew their weaknesses. We knew what were the things we wanted them to be able to accomplish. So we had a place to start. So we set out to build a school that was based around our kids. Now, one of the things that came out of that as we were starting to develop that was we figured out that if you build a school that's based around the kids who are in the building, your school will always be changing. So we weren't going to be able to design this wonderful idea that we would be able to use into perpetuity and roll on. This was going to be different every single year, sometimes as the year goes on. The children change, they evolve, things were going to change. Which brings me to my second principle. And that is identify your basic belief system. What is it that you really believe? What are the things that are non-negotiable for you? At Sugar Creek, our basic belief system was that the achievement gap was a lie. There was absolutely no reason why our students should not be able to perform at the same level as anybody else. There was nothing inherently wrong with our kids, and we knew that. So that brought us to, if the students didn't learn, the teacher didn't teach. Now, I'm not telling you that I've got teachers who are slack. My teachers were working. But teaching requires a transfer. It's not teaching if nobody learns anything. You may have presented, but you didn't teach. Well, when we got to, if the students didn't learn, the teacher didn't teach, then two things happened. One is it gave us control because now we're responsible. And two, it eliminated blaming the kids. So we no longer could say it was because of all the myriad of things that people say, the reasons why our students weren't learning. When you identify your belief system, it has to be non-negotiable. And everybody has to buy in. Now, some people will get there slowly. Some people aren't going to get there. And those people have to be marginalized because they absolutely will prevent you from reaching your goal. I'll give you an example. This year, we had a new teacher. And her job was to work with a group of children, middle school kids that we have accelerated. And they needed to complete 2 years' worth of curriculum in 1 year. Now, we've been doing this for 5 years. It wasn't the first time we'd ever tried to do it. And we'd only had one child in 5 years who was in the program who was not successful. This teacher, she was new, she was struggling. We were giving her support, we were providing staff development, but things weren't getting better. At the end of the first quarter, I sat down to talk with her about how things were going, and she said to me, well, here's the problem. These kids really can't do this. We're expecting too much from them. What we really need to do is back up and slow down and just teach the 1 year curriculum, and I think they'll be very successful. That was the end of the conversation for me. Because I knew that if she didn't believe they could do it, they didn't have a chance, not one chance of being able to be successful. I had no alternative but to replace the teacher because I had students who had the opportunity to be on a trajectory to be accelerated, and they were going to miss that opportunity with that teacher. Which brings me to my third principle, and that is that your actions and your belief systems have to be aligned. Your practices and beliefs must be aligned because if they are not, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You will not get where you're trying to go. My dad used to say to me, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. The way that you align your practices and beliefs will set the tone for how things go. So let me give you two examples. The first is one where we had a really good idea, sounded good on paper, wasn't aligned with the practices and how that affected us, and one where we deliberately solved a problem starting with our belief system. In the first, our school is located in a parking lot with the county library. We share that parking lot. The kids don't even have to cross the street to get to the library. And so we made the decision, why should we try to reproduce county resources? We'll just use the county library, and we won't have a school library. Well, the children can go to the library. We're allowed to use the library whenever it's open. They give us open access to it. But the problem was we had a literacy problem. Our children are 90% proficient in math, but they're only 70% proficient in reading. We had set a goal to make literacy an issue. Well, when we started to look at that and why we weren't making progress, the fact that we didn't have any books in our school probably had something to do with it. So once we realized it sounded good on paper, but once we realigned that, we bought classroom libraries, we bought magazines, we've now built a library, and we're in the process of stocking that library. In the second situation, we had a problem, and we started with what do we believe to get there. The problem was, third week of school, we just finished beginning of year benchmarks, and we had 21 kids, third, fourth, and fifth grade, who were reading severely below grade level. We started to talk about what are we going to do about these 21 kids. And now you got to remember our belief system is every one of our children can learn. So we could have gone through the process of taking them through intervention and the whole process and getting them classified as special ed, but that really didn't change anything. We still had to come up with how are we going to teach them. So we looked at what we had to work with. We had a teacher on staff who was both special ed and regular ed certified. We pulled her out of a classroom, hired another teacher, and this is 4 weeks into school, hired another teacher, and that teacher now teaches reading to those 21 kids, third, fourth, and fifth, so they're in small groups. It's 21 over 3 grades. But the difference is she doesn't teach remediation. She teaches the grade level standards, but she has the strategies to be able to differentiate and to be able to scaffold and to support those kids so that she can move them towards grade level. But they are doing the grade level standards with someone who can assist them. We just did our middle of the year benchmarks and have seen tremendous progress with that. One of the things that we found out is that once you're student-centered, once you've identified your belief systems and you match your actions to your beliefs, you're going to find that your culture changes. And ours changed in a couple of ways. With the students, one of the things that we find with our population of kids is that it's not necessarily cool to be smart. We needed to change that. We did lots of things, incentives, reinforcements, we celebrated successes, but when we knew that we were getting where we tried to go was the year that instead of the student council officers that were elected being the hip kids, they were the top 5%. We knew we were moving in the right direction. We also had the same issue with social skills. We teach character ed, we explicitly teach the behaviors we want, but we were concerned, we were getting 150 new kids, we were concerned about the culture. And we come up with all kinds of plans for how we were going to address that, but what we found out is we didn't have to. We hadn't reached what our assistant director calls critical mass, and the students did it. So new kids came in, the students said things to them like, we don't talk to our teachers like that, we respect our teachers. We don't fight here, we don't have to, because there are better ways to solve problems. Teachers made some shifts as well. One of the big shifts for teachers was the idea that I don't have 25 kids, I have 900. And all of us have 900. One of the things that the research says about children from generational poverty is that they value relationships. But they also take a long time to build trust. They're not quick to accept you. So once those relationships have been built and established, the last thing in the world we need to do is tear them apart or nix them. So our teachers continue to look after their kids as they move up, and the kids know they're checking on them. They stop in the hallway, I saw your project, it looked great. Just that kind of constant reinforcement. Well, I'll give you an example of how I knew when that was working for us. Last year, at the end of the year, West Charlotte had graduated, and we had 4 of our former grads in West Charlotte's senior class. And instead of going to lunch with their parents or going out with their friends, when graduation was over, they came back to our school in their caps and gowns and asked me could they go see their middle school teachers so that their middle school teachers could see that they had graduated. I'm not going to say this is always smooth. It's fits and starts. I'd like to say it went really well and oh, gee, isn't it wonderful? I tell you the good stuff. Let me give you an example of something that happened with me personally that caused me to have to rethink some things. One of the shifts I had to make as an administrator was the idea that I had to empower my teachers. They needed to feel confident that they could make the kind of decisions that needed to be made in the classroom to make things happen. I thought I'd done a good job of that. I went to a team meeting, and the teachers were complaining about an instruction they had been given that they weren't happy with by one of the curriculum specialists. And when I started to delve into it, it turned out that they didn't seem to understand why they had been asked to do this. So I said, well, did you ask why? And one of the teachers said to me, it's okay to ask why? That was when I knew I had not accomplished my goal. And I had to back up and start again. But with regrouping, it's worked out. This is an ongoing process. I wish I could say, well, we arrived, but we haven't. But it is an ongoing process. I do believe that if we continue to be student-centered, if we continue to identify and follow our belief system, and if our actions continue to match our belief system, that we will not be the little engine that could. We will be the little engine that does. Thank you.